budget before we came in here. We won't go into that because that will, over the next month, we'll talk about the budget in June. So we have 3 meetings, 5 to talk about the budget and what items to discuss at a later time. So I'm going down to, what we call the meeting in order. David, you mind the invocation? Sure.
Most gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you again for an opportunity to come discuss the future for our community and our town. And Lord, we just ask that you help us make the right decisions for the right reasons. And I ask the prayers in Jesus' name. Amen.
Would please stand for pledge of allegiance? Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
It's okay. I think when you mocked, coming back, you must have changed it. I didn't notice.
I didn't know it either.
Gary just pledged allegiance to the
Oh.
flag of Carolina.
I saw that. I thought that was a statement.
We try to teach it, you know.
That was a test.
I mean, he was a brigadier general.
Yeah. Still can't do it.
Hey, I'm down to, after messing that up, let's want to do it again. Number 5, agenda change. Any changes to the agenda at this point in time? That means.
Oh, yes.
Carrie, I think that's one.
I'm on the agenda to discuss, House Bill 765, but after reading the resolution that's included, in the consent agenda, I don't feel it's a need for me to say anything.
Resolution, do I have a motion to delete 9B, discussion about Bill 765?
You don't have to have a motion.
I have a motion.
Right.
I do have to have a motion for approval
Well,
of
the
the
whole
agenda.
thing, right.
Motion.
Do I have a motion for the approval of the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as amended for remove 9B.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, so please. Thank you. Okay, number 6, I need a motion for the approval of the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the consent agenda as printed.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, so please. Moving right along. Do we have any public comments?
None,
None.
so listed.
So we're on to number 8. And
You want to say anything?
we finished, we had the previous meeting at 5 o'clock, we talked about the budget. We also had Michael Harvey from the In Focus talked about something that we need to deal with in the future as far as updating our comprehensive plan and our ordinance and all that. He gave us a brief discussion of what they could provide to us and how they're doing with other municipalities within North Carolina. At this point in time, do you want to do any additional updates or take any questions for people that have written on it?
I'll provide a very brief update and then take any questions. So thank you again for inviting me. My name is Michael Harvey with In Focus. I come to you all with 30 years of municipal and county planning management. That includes floodplain management, watershed management, and unfortunately stormwater, although that's not my area of expertise. I've still done it. So what we were asked to come talk about is the need for the community to update its current land use plan and update its current land use regulations. To break this information down succinctly, what I'm going to remind everyone here, since we have the future land use map on the wall, forgive me for walking towards it, it identifies where the community wishes to see very specific development patterns. Residential, commercial, industrial, business, etc. And what a comprehensive plan is designed to do is to serve as the blueprint for any community. It identifies opportunities and constraints. It identifies goals, policies, and objectives as it relates to how the community wants to grow, typically over a 20-year time horizon. And it establishes initiatives that the town can begin to implement to put that document into existence. How do you primarily implement a land use plan? You adopt land use regulations, zoning, subdivision, etc. From our standpoint, your land use plan should be updated to include some community outreach, specifically asking members of the community what they like about the community, what they don't like about the community, what concerns they may have about the community, what they'd like to see the town board do with the community, to try to help build some flavor in terms of what local residents, advisory board members, and ultimately town board members want. And as we flesh out objectives and policy statements that would be utilized to implement and address those opportunities and also address the constraints that we're working with, we would update your current land use regulations to reflect that vision. As I indicated, your zoning ordinance is the main implementing tool of an adopted land use plan. Some of the areas of concern we have is that your current land use regulations need to be updated to ensure consistency with state law. That includes the various regulations that are going through the General Assembly at the current time, most of which I think will probably either be adopted or left to not have formal action by August, September of this year. I believe that there is enough for us to do to help provide you centralized sections for not only procedures in terms of how you as a community are going to process permits, process zoning amendments, process special use permits, etc., to address land use issues to ensure that you're consistent with what current state law would require and not require, but also be available to help implement any changes that result from any action of the General Assembly over the next couple of months. This is a project that will take about 12 months. That is the interest that I've been informed by Mr. Humphreys of what the community would like to see. That is certainly something we can do. This will be a public process, meaning In Focus as a consultant is not going to come in here and produce 2 documents for you and say, here, adopt it and move on. We cannot operate that way. In our humble opinion, that's a violation of the Code of Professional Conduct for my profession. So we'll be working with your planning board, we'll be working with you all as we start doing ordinance updates. That is always a process where there's education, as well as soliciting feedback with your land use plan. We would be talking to your local residents, we'd be sending out surveys. We would also be holding sessions to talk about your current land use map and what a future land use plot might entail. This is really designed to give you the tools in the toolbox necessary so that you can avoid charges that you're inconsistent with state law, and as a result, you should allow development that I believe would be inconsistent with your not only current land use plan, but what I anticipate your future land use plan to be. So that is why we're here, and that's what we're offering to do. We look forward to working with you. So I'm more than happy to answer any additional questions you all may have at this juncture about this process or the project.
So you mentioned that you work for, do a lot of this work for counties.
And municipalities, yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Okay, so, and municipalities. So how much of this level of services do you see towns doing, municipalities versus a county? And I guess my question is, if a county should go, if Union County were to go through this process with you, could any of that, could we just use some of that, or a subsection of that?
I'm going to answer that question in 2 ways. As an incorporated municipality, you're responsible for enforcing your own land use regulations. You would actually have to adopt Union County's ordinance in its entirety to have it enforced within your community. I will give you a prime example. In Brunswick County, where I'm hopefully, knock on wood, finalizing their UDO update pending state law changes, they have a local community that effectively adopts their ordinance and enforces it within their community. But you would have to adopt the ordinance in total. And I don't know if that's necessarily what you all want, and I'm not trying to make value judgments on Union County's rules, but I would prefer that I obtain an understanding of what you're looking to achieve, and then give you a document that serves your needs. But to answer your question, yes, ma'am, you could, but it's an all or nothing proposition. You can't just adopt portions of it.
Yeah, that was my
Yeah,
question.
in Union County, I'll give you another example. If they have a flood ordinance, a separate flood ordinance, it is conceivable that you could, working with Union County, have that adopted and have them enforce the flood ordinance in your jurisdiction. Countywide flood ordinance, let's say. But when it comes to land use, unless you're willing to accept the land uses as they currently exist in Union County, in your community, in your zoning districts, you're better off, and I know it's a self-serving comment, so forgive me, you're better off having an independent ordinance that reflects your community's vision.
The second question is there a, part of what you deliver to us, is there a comparison of our existing ordinances to the new
So I do this in two ways. I usually give you all an assessment of what I think of your current regulations in terms of compliance with state law and your land use plan before we begin. And then as we move forward, I have a track change option so that you can see what I'm changing. I also am a very prolific writer of footnotes. I will give you a prime example. In one community, I'm editing their entire rules and procedures section. That's how land use applications are processed, zoning amendments, flood damage prevention permits, etc. And the 100-page chapter has about 200 footnotes. Why? It's to explain why we're doing something a certain way. It's to explain what the new regulation will do versus what current regulations will do. It's there as an educational tool so you can understand why I went from A to B, and that you have the philosophical justification for that action. So you don't feel like I'm forcing you to adopt something you may not truly have a comfort level with. You can at least see my logic, and we can have that conversation so that I ensure that you are comfortable moving forward.
And another question on we talked a little bit about after this process is done and going forward. And so we talked about it from the angle of changes that the town wanted, but what about changes that, because of legislation out there, we might need to change that we're not aware of? So what about that level of service? Do you anticipate that being a level of service that you would offer?
We can offer it, and we would do a selective contract to address that. As I indicated to you during your budget meeting, when a community uses In Focus, we have what's called a general warranty period with our rules and regulations to try to provide assistance and guidance on how to interpret it if necessary. I have actually full faith in your staff, but we still offer that service. If there's any major issues we need to correct, we will work with your staff to correct it during that warranty period. After that, then yes, we have continuing service contracts with numerous communities where we do help them do ordinance changes if necessary to address either changes in state law or changes desired by the local board.
Maybe you could provide us a sample of that to look at as we look at this whole thing, like sample services agreement.
Sure.
Yeah, that would be good.
What is the warranty period?
It's about 1.5 to 2 years. It depends on the community, depends on the complexity of the ordinance, to be honest. But it's where we're available on call to answer questions, provide assistance if it's necessary.
To me, one of the most valuable aspects that I heard you speak about is using a survey to find out what our residents think and want. How far into the process would that happen? Is that like step one?
Well, some of that
Not?
is really your direction to me, but bluntly, step one, presuming a successful negotiation of contract, is for me to provide you an assessment of your current land use plan and your zoning ordinance, and us to have probably a strategy session to discuss what opportunities and constraints we are seeing and get your feedback on that. Phase two would involve us starting to draft your new ordinance, at least the administrative provisions, the procedure provisions. We don't focus on land use until after we get some input from the community. And that's where we would start releasing the survey to the general population to start soliciting feedback, not only on the ordinance and land use issues, but the actual land use plan itself. So it's really phase two where we start that process, because we want to hear from you first after we told you what we think works and doesn't work, because it's not fair for you to react in a vacuum.
And how is that survey disseminated?
We typically post it on the local website through a survey engine where people can fill it out and we get the results. We will more than likely do, and this is all predicated on a contract, we will do open house meetings to try to solicit feedback from local residents. I typically like to go to local businesses and solicit business feedback, and while I'm there, allow local residents to get a copy of the survey so we can get that feedback.
You don't ever mail it.
Well, we can if you all would like us to. Unfortunately, that's a cost that you would have to incur. So we usually try to do it in ways that don't require a huge financial investment, although I'm not opposed to it. I don't know how practical it is to mail the 3,000 or so Fairview residents you have. I'd rather try to solicit their feedback in other ways where we can also have more broad conversations about not only the land use plan, but the ordinance that I may not necessarily be able to get from a survey.
Is there a percentage of the community that you desire to hear from, or that's an average, or, I mean, I know it's probably low.
The most successful I have been able to achieve since rejoining In Focus full-time in 2021 was 30%.
Wow.
The least successful during the same time period was a small community outside Rocky Mount where the population's about, I'll say 2,000 to 3,000 people, and I only got about 200 or so responses to the survey. And I consider that low, but we also did open house meetings where we got some feedback, and I felt at least comfortable looking at the elected officials in the eye and saying, this is the number of responses we have, this is the comments we've received, what's your reaction? And we gave them a comprehensive plan that I think reflected the needs of the community based on the feedback we got.
We conducted a survey here several years ago. We sent out 1,000 and we had 330 replies, which he said at the time was a good figure.
That's good. I like that.
And then for those that may not be aware of, the ordinances we're going by, we've been incorporated for 15 years now.
20.
Or 20 now, 20?
We adopted our ordinance in 2005.
Okay, so 20 years now, so that's why, things have changed a lot in the last 20 years, and so we thought that's justification for going back and getting everything up to date, because that would be, and you justify that, in my mind, is to.
Well, yeah, state laws changed quite dramatically in the last 20 years. So one of the issues that I am going to be identifying for you is there's going to be need to update to ensure consistent with state law. Another example I'll give you, but it's a throwaway example, so bear with me. And I didn't mean to interrupt you, Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, but the General Assembly of Infinite Wisdom established a parking standard a couple years ago, where municipalities and counties cannot require parking in excess of very specific criteria. So I've had to go back to several communities and say, yep, here's your parking ordinance update. We have to do this because we can't be inconsistent with state law. And I won't bore you with how many communities I go to offer assistance. And as I'm perusing their ordinance, the simple reference to a new provision of 160D does not make it 160D compliant. Simple reference to saying, well, our parking could be this. No, you have to be explicit. So we're going to be providing you some explicit examples of opportunities to improve your regulations to ensure that nobody can claim you're not following state law.
I think the example you gave, which raised my eyebrows, was that the state adopted something that allows developers who want to come in.
Yep.
And if we don't have our ordinances set and locked down tight, they can then in turn sue the town of Fairview, and we're liable for their expenses for their attorneys.
The development community under current North Carolina general statute does have the ability to file civil lawsuits and obtain their costs back and their expenses fighting lawsuits, correct? And that is a change from what it historically has been. Now, that, I understand why it would concern you, and don't forgive me because I'm not trying to minimize your concern, but I will say this. Ordinances that have been updated to reflect current state practice And as long as you follow the appropriate rules of procedure, and one of the reasons that I'm keen on helping you do this is because I think your rules of procedure need to be updated. Eliminates a lot of your liability moving forward.
Well, that was my point. that
Yeah.
If we don't have our
Ducks in a
act
row.
together, ducks in a row, whatever terminology we want to use, we've opened a door that our state is allowed to be open.
I'll
It
give
could cost
you,
us money.
yeah, I'll give you another example. I will not name the county, but there was a county that ended up going through a evidentiary hearing process for a special use permit. And it was for a solar facility, a very large scale solar facility. They denied it. Unfortunately, it came out that board members had had communication with one another prior to the meeting. They did not make findings of fact that supported the conclusions they reached to deny the request. Excuse me. And one board member freely admitted during the meeting that he was relying on information he was provided by someone that had not introduced the evidence into the record. So they're being sued now.
Yeah.
And it's my humble opinion, the applicant's going to win. And the county will have to pay damages. That's the prime example of what I would hope to help you avoid.
Anything else? We thank you for enlightening what at this point in time, I guess based on what you just said, we're really lucky that we haven't had that issue, and then as we update ours, avoid the issue in the future. So we thank you for that, your time, and then.
Not a problem. I look forward for the opportunity. If we can help you now, great. If not, I understand, but InFocus is always here, and we're more than happy to provide assistance as needed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we're now at number 9 on our agenda, items of business. This is again, this will be you discuss critical intersection update that just concerns Highway 218 and Union Trail Fairview Road.
Yes, sir. Several years, I like this mic.
Yeah, I noticed that. Really
We
productive.
talk loud enough in minutes.
Well, it just comes right through that little hole there. Several years ago, last year, y'all agreed to partner with the county to investigate intersections that need to be improved. And what the county wanted to do was hire a consultant and review the intersections in the county and come up with a list of several that they could go ahead and do the studies for, so in case the state had some money, we would be ready for them to spend it on that intersection. And there's several, as you read your insert there in the book, several in other towns that are worse than ours, of course. But anyway, you agree to help them pay for it. And they've gone through the process and identified one of your intersections as critical. How they do that is in various ways, partly design, partly accidents, partly people killed, whatever. So they defined the intersection at 218 Union Trail Fairview Road as a critical intersection. We went through, the county, and I, and the consultant went through and had public hearings, meetings on the intersection. And after the public hearings and the design process and costs, we went through everything that we needed to. It was decided that the public and the practical change to this intersection would be a roundabout. And the pictures are in there that shows you the roundabout and how it would be designed. Quite interesting. We had the virtual public hearings, and you'd be surprised at how many people did come on and voice their opinion and concerns about whichever one. The alternative was the signal, and the roundabout was considered safer and like other people. So that said, I would like for you to adopt a motion or approve a motion to adopt. Let me make sure I wrote this down. Well, I wanted you to do the motion, and I forgot where I wrote it. Anyway, to adopt the critical intersection plan for Indian Trail, Fairview, and 218. Adopt that plan as our plan. That wasn't right verbiage, but Teresa ought to keep up with me. But we did spend some time in the motion. The motion is really to adopt the plan that the county has come up with using the consultants.
In adopting the plan, what is that?
Well,
we're
the study,
basically-
the study.
We're accepting study as
Accepting the roundabout as a solution.
accepting that as a solution. Okay. That's- okay.
And like I said, and a little more knowledge about this is, we were asked, as far as the town of Fairview, we asked this question several years ago, and we thought that Reef Road and, it was 218 and Sykes Mill, for Fairview, that was more critical than this one. I guess there's about 15 different people involved and everything, all the stuff. They looked at the big plan and they decided that this one was more critical than what we had adopted or suggested. Am I saying that correct? And so that was based upon their study and things and so forth. So, and one of the critical things is, in this critical intersection thing is, I was really surprised, we sat through several of these discussions, that one of the main driving factors was a roundabout is about $1 million cheaper than the turn signal and turn lane. I was really shocked to hear that. 2.9 for
safer.
It's safe. So I think so. Do I hear a motion to accept their findings that the critical intersection of Highway 218 East Trail Fairview be studied and discussed and be part of the decision making?
I just want to say before we do that, one of the questions that was brought up in that public meeting was the need to adjust because it's quite a little bit of an incline there to get to that intersection off of Indian Trail Fairview Road.
And the design, the construction is always going to have to make that level if it's around.
Yeah.
So,
Which involves my land, so.
good.
Well, I asked the same thing. I asked a different question was, especially because y'all have a lot of 18-wheelers and flat bids and all stuff coming off there. Is there any advantage to making the lanes around the roundabout, if it's single lane, to be wider than a normal lane, because to make the process easier, people coming on to 218? And they said that the answer that they passed on to me was, if it's wide enough for 2 lanes, people will make it 2 lanes. So there's really no advantage. So that was one of the questions I thought was worthwhile.
Yeah.
But they do give trucks the ability to go.
Up on,
The curbing is kind of rounded off, so it doesn't damage
Yeah.
the tires.
But I mean, the ultimate goal is to slow down the trucks, and that's what they said, they wouldn't compromise that by making it.
So do I have a motion?
Figure out how to word this.
I move that we approve the county's recommendation for, the roundabout to be placed at the critical intersection of Highway 218 at Indian Trail Fairview Road.
Understand, this has not been funded.
Right.
So it's still a plan.
We're approving the plan.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? And like what he said is, this is like the plan, the money's not announced, so we don't know how long this might take.
They said in the meeting 5 to 10 years.
Any further discussion? All in favor, show of hands.
Ed, thank you for that.
Thank you very much. Hey, at this point in time, since we haven't, we deleted item 9B, I'll start with David. If you have any council comments.
I do not.
The only thing I want to say is that the county issued a resolution regarding House Bill 765. And it was in the Union County newsletter that comes out by email. There's a link to it there. If you didn't get it, if you can't find it, let me know. I'll email it to you. But it was very, very well written, but it very well details all the issues with that House Bill 765. And I would just encourage everybody to stay really plugged in, focused, and not accept our representatives voting for it.
And with that being said, we did send a letter to our officials saying our opposition to that bill.
We are sending in a letter tomorrow, yeah.
We've
Already sent them letters.
We've
This
already
is
sent
a
them
resolution.
A resolution.
Resolution, yes. So we've done it, one, now we'll follow up with a resolution. Are you working on the resolution?
No, they wrote it. You wrote it.
I wrote it.
You're signing it anyway.
It's in your packet.
I just wanted to speak about the first visit of Ollie. She came to the park on May 7th, and Olive is the outreach library vehicle. And Danielle Carlton, who is the outreach librarian, was very pleased with that first visit. Not that we had so many people there, but she was looking for a trial experience, and it was very cloudy and sort of misty, rainy that day. So it was no surprise that there was not a lot of people there. But it gave her a chance to see what it was going to be like to come to our park and find an appropriate place to park and get all of her equipment set up. And I was very impressed. And they will be back on May 28th. This is going to be like once every 3 weeks. And so hopefully Teresa and I are going to get it promoted before the 28th, and we hope the weather will be better and a lot of people will come out. And this is for all ages, adults as well as children. And if you have any questions, I might not be able to answer them, but if I can't, I will get some answers.
Is there a set time?
1 to 3.
I have a question kind of surrounding that, and then also for potentially Michael's survey. Do we track or have the ability to know how many hits our website gets? Is that something that we look at?
We do have that availability. I have not looked at that recently.
Okay. Well, that would give us some idea of how many people view it, so we would know if we posted a survey, what does that look like? Or how do we communicate events, et cetera. So,
We have more people look at the Facebook page than the website.
okay, all right, well, that's good to know.
But I put,
I've done both, and I usually rely on the community's discretion, so we've done both on a Facebook page or on a website, so we can accommodate whatever you all would like.
Well, the website forces, you have to go.
right.
Facebook, it's presented to you.
Right.
So, okay, all right.
That's how
I actually do. I told you I'd get back with summer camps. Summer school has been announced. So we're actually doing 3 summer camps as of now, working on adding some more in there. On June the 16th through the 19th, we're doing an art camp. June the 23rd through the 26th, we're doing around the world. So they're going to learn about different countries every day and like games, snacks, all that kind of stuff. And then July the 15th through the 19th, we're going to do like an old school camp where you like tie-dye, play games, things like that. We posted what's the word? Registration today, and we already have 10 people that have paid, signed up, ready to go. Of course, if you sign up for every week, you get a discount, or you can just do 1 week, whatever. So we already have that going.
What was the second date?
June the 23rd through the 26th.
23rd through the 26th.
Yes, and they're all 9 to 1 o'clock.
And what's your capacity that you could handle?
We are capping it at 40 because that's what we did last year, and it worked out.
What's the ages that you're?
Rising first graders to rising fifth graders.
And how many adults? do
We
you
have-
For the 40?
We have right now, we have 5 adults that will be here all day.
And all of this is done here in.
Correct. Yeah.
Awesome.
Have you any?
And the signups are on the website, is that where they go?
On Facebook. You can pay on the website, but the sign up is on Facebook.
And the cost is what?
It is $165 for the whole week.
Okay.
That is paying for all of our volunteers and all the supplies.
And that's each of those 3, each one is.
Correct.
160.
Yeah, but if you have a sibling, you get a discount. If you sign up for more than 1 week, you get a discount. So,
Yeah, I've got 3 things. Those that may not be aware of it, on May 1st, we opened up the park for fishing. Give me that look, I say something wrong. Because the fishing, so we will be able to fish in the pond, effective May 1st. Main thing is kids under 16 have to be adults over 16, and the adult has to have a North Carolina fishing license. And the wildlife people will be doing periodic checks to be sure those over 16 have that license, so that's something to think about. They have started construction on where the amphitheater will be and the grading and so forth. They're about a third of the way through, it's the last I heard. And so that's progressing, and this rain this week may have set them back a little bit, but that's progressing. This is something I asked Spencer about, and it's a lot less work than, we're not having the fall festival due to construction taking place in the park. And I asked her, I was approached by someone that has a new band that started they want to get some exposure. Said, if they're willing and giving the schedule, would we want to consider letting them come in and form it? And I assume it'd probably be a little at no cost to them. We don't do it like we normally do. We don't pay parkers. We might have a food truck. We don't want to increase the workload for the event people that are doing that. And then the latter part of the summer, any conversation, discussion about that, them pursuing that. Do you think that would be a good idea or a bad idea? It can create a whole lot of work for you.
it's not about the work.
Well, the problem.
You got to be able, if anybody else reaches out and says, I want to use your stage, you got to be willing to let them.
And what does that mean? I mean,
Set a precedent.
other than us talking to them,
You set the precedent, if you do it for one, you
Yeah.
should do it for others.
So you have to figure out pricing and everything.
like I said, I don't think they're gonna
Well,
charge.
I know, but
So I don't think, but think about it, we would make the decision, I think, but
It could be a kickoff for the amphitheater event.
Sure.
They donated their time and money for.
but the thing would be with the amphitheater, if the ground
Ground.
is gonna be ready
Right.
to use,
Right,
that'll
it has
be,
to have some kind of grass on it.
yeah.
that'll be
Nobody
your
wants
call.
to sit in
It'll
the,
be hard to grow grass in the middle of summer.
And the only other things we can move on is that, we have a lengthy discussion over the development, adjacent to Fairview. I haven't heard anything about that unless I know the bill was pulled as far as the satellite annexation. I don't know anymore. Does anybody else know anymore?
It didn't like cross over, is what I understood, so that was that.
Was it? Okay, anything else for Every time. Well,
And
Anything else?
we can do anything,
With what?
Macon.
The information or updates to the Macon Farms, what is it called? Issues. We have given you the updates, correspondence between the mayor and Macon and the state. They're pretty self-explanatory, but if you read them and have a question or concern, get back to me because they are complicated. Be aware that the attorney is on top of it. The community, we heard from the community. David, it's on YouTube if you want to hear it. The community was quite vocal last week on what they thought the problems were. We addressed those problems and there's not a whole lot we can do. They think there's a lot of power we have. We've tried to tell them that, well, no, we don't control a lot of things that they have problems with. For example, NCDOT roads, we can't control those. But we are working through the state, making sure that Mr. Macon stays out of the floodplain and flood area, especially on Goose Creek where there's at least a 200-foot buffer also. Usually the floodplain is wider than the buffer, so you don't have any problem. It's the floodplain. You cannot do anything in the floodplain or the buffer. So we're having that checked. Just read it and make sure you understand and we've tried to put it in the package as the dates of the letters and the progression. Here's something we sent, he replied. So read all those replied. That they're not exactly what we would think replies would be in some cases, but he did reply. He is working with us. He doesn't believe everything that we believe. And I think the main thing about the community is the not knowing the end of the project, mud on the road every time they go down the street, it's muddy, big trucks going up and down the road. And for the person next door, of course, is the dust. We don't have much control over dust other than particles in the air. That's hard to define. And if he's got a right to have a dump truck come to his property, how much dust does a dump truck create and what's acceptable? So there's a lot of detail to it, but we got to control what we could control and try to do the best we can. We've got several meetings coming up, especially in September, October 1, about his renewal. You were gracious enough to give him a year to work on his Clomar, his application to replace his temporary bridge with a permanent bridge. So we're anxious to see how that progresses and what happens then, and whether we want to give him an extension or not. So, and he's aware of that. So there's a lot of things, a lot of different parts happening at the same time.
And I think that the meeting, what it did is for those who weren't there, we started out the meeting with rules that we wanted to operate the meeting. One of them was we would not be involved in dialogue with those people showed up. We have 12 people did speak. We could ask questions, and then the attorney took notes the whole time. And then we met with her in closed session after the public hearing and went through all the things that she thought was the questions she had and she's going to look into with the understanding she's going to continue to pursue and try to answer those questions at some point in time. We don't know when she can get an answer, but she's going to the concern I got out was, and it's an impression for those people there that we're not doing anything. And that's not the case. We're trying to do whatever we can within the boundaries we have, and we're limited. That's why we reached out to state and others, is to they've got more say-so than what we do when it comes to issues like that. So if they have any way to remedy the situation, we'll keep you updated what they're working on. I have a motion to adjourn.
I can take this one. Make a motion to adjourn.
I second.
All in favor, put your hand. Thank you. Me?
How much is that my check?